Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and as always, thank you for tuning in. Today we're going back to a classic on this channel. We're going to play a few rounds of blackjack, just very casually. And for today's video, I am using the Virtuoso P1 deck. Of course, this is not what this deck was originally designed for. This was a cardistry specific deck, but as I mentioned before on this channel, I can't do cardistry anymore due to an injury in my left hand. So we're just gonna jump through this, but first, let me show you what the cards themselves look like. So, as you can see, we don't have the traditional suits. We have here is a red and black triangle, which I think takes the approximation of the hearts. We have this yellow and black sort of crown design that I think takes the position of the spades. We have this blue and black sort of diamond shape. Well, I say sort of, it is a diamond shape that, of course, I think takes over for the diamonds. And then finally, if I can get a rabbit here, we have the green and black rectangles, which I believe is taking over for the clubs. So those are the four suits. Not that suits matter in blackjack, but just to give you a sense of what these cards look like. And then I'm going to give them the best shuffle that I am able to with limited mobility in my left hand, of course. And we're just gonna scuff shuffle like this. And I think that should do more than enough. We're going to be operating under the idea that the casino, which will be on the top half of your screen, we're going to operate that they have to stand on 16 or higher. That is how we're going to operate. So let's get into it. Right away, our first card is a king. The casino pulls an ace. We have another king, so that puts us at 20, and we are going to assume that this is 20. Of course, we're on 20, so we are going to stand on that. The casino is also on 20, and that is a push. Nobody wins. But we aren't gambling today, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, next. We pull a 3. Not what you want. Casino answers with a 4. Okay? We are at 13. We're going to put that card there. We're assuming, of course, that this is 14. So we're going to hit and put ourselves at 18. We're going to stand right there. The casino has 12. The casino hits. And they bust on 22. So we have won for the first time. Let's see if we can keep that going. Of course, I don't have a proper shoe, so the cards are just going back to the bottom. We'll shuffle them again after a couple more hands. So let's see here. We have pulled a 10. The casino, another 4. We're at 14. So we are going to hit and bust, unfortunately. The casino has 11, but of course, we busted anyway. So, not that it matters what their score would or would not have been. I know that in a previous video of mine, I don't know if it was the most recent video that I uploaded or the one prior to that as we pull a 7, but I mentioned that I was looking at getting back into filmmaking because it is a sincere passion of mine, and I've decided that over over the next couple of months, I'm going to be setting aside whatever cash I can, and of course we know in today's economy that is not a lot of cash, but I'm going to be setting aside what I can to hopefully save up for a proper camera, and I'm looking at a couple of options in 2 different price ranges. As we pull a 5, we're at 12. The casino, we're going to assume that's 20. We're going to hit and put ourselves at 17. We're going to sit right there. So I'm looking at 2 separate price ranges, and those are around the, 1200 to maybe 1500, and then the 5 to 800 range. There are different cameras in those ranges. Some I'm familiar with, some not so much. Of course, when I was doing most of my work in school, of course, they weren't my cameras, they were the schools or friends or, a production company that we rented from. As the casino also pulls 18, but we have, of course, 17, so that is a loss on our end. But the camera that I was most familiar with, that I did most of my work on, was a Panasonic Lumix GH5. That was the camera that I am most familiar with. So one of the cameras I'm looking at is the successor to that camera, the Panasonic Lumix S5 Mark II. I think there's a Mark III as well, but I haven't really researched it all that well. I'm still coming around to which price range I want to commit to, because either way it's going to take, as I was saying, either way it's going to take just a stupid amount of time to realistically get there, because I don't get paid, I don't get paid a lot, but if I do go for like the 1200, the 12 to 1500 range, then there's also like the Sony, I don't remember if it's the A6700 that's like $1,500, or the one of the other Sonys. But Sony makes really good cameras, and I am a little bit more familiar with some of their products than I am with like Canon or Nikon or stuff like that. As we pull 6 and 7, the casino has 2. So we're going to hit on this, of course. This is only 13, and we get a 9. I believe that does bust us out, unfortunately. Let me just double check my math. So that's 13 there, plus 9 is 22. So that indeed busts us out. The casino had 11. Unfortunate. But I think that's a good time to reshovel and start again. But again, Panasonic I have a lot of familiarity with. We also used some Canons. I think we had the 70D was the Canon that we used. Of course, I preferred, at that time, I preferred the Panasonic. I had a lot of success with that, especially for photography, which is another thing, I would be getting a camera for. And one of these days, I feel like I should do a video just sharing some of the old photography work that I used to do, or maybe, maybe I could link my Instagram. I don't think I'm going to do that because I don't really use Instagram, but it has some of my stuff on there from, back when I was still regularly, making photography a habit, you could say. But, there's a lot to think about. I know the Sony ZV or ZEV10 I've heard great things about, but, it's a very difficult decision, of course, so. Okay, let's get into what we could call our second round here after our shuffle. We have a 10. Casino has a queen. We have 20. assume this is 20 by the casino. We're going to stand right there on our 20. The casino does indeed have 20. Another push. No moolah for us. You know, of course, it would be very beneficial for me if this was actually for real money and I could just, skip the line and get right to where I want to. Of course, I have friends that still have cameras, but like working out schedules with that just feels like such a pain. So I'm not gonna bother. I'm just gonna work. I'll see if I can get some extra shifts, and maybe maybe I'll go donate some plasma, and work a little bit faster to go and get that. But again, I still really just want to narrow down, which one I actually want to get, because it's not just the camera, of course. It's the lenses, whether I want to go mirrorless or traditional DSLR. I think a lot of people are moving into the mirrorless direction nowadays. I think a lot of companies are making more mirrorless cameras, and I don't have a lot of experience with mirrorless. I shot mostly on traditional DSLR. We're on 12, we're going to hit here. And that puts us at 22. We bust out. The casino had 12. Casino had 12. But yeah, I don't know a lot about mirrorless. I understand it's like slightly newer stuff. But I'll watch I'll watch some reviews, see what I can gather on that front. We have an 8. Casino has 10. We have 18. We're assuming the casino has 20, but we're going to hold right here where we are. The casino has jackpot, blackjack, so that's unfortunate for us, but but yeah, I just really, with the way the world is, and I've said this before how many times, that I just want to get back into some of my old hobbies, some of the things that kind of distracted me from a lot of the nonsense, we'll say, going on in the world these days. And I started this channel back in 2022 or 2023, whenever it was, primarily as a way to sort of keep in touch with that side of myself that was, making movies and writing scripts and doing all that stuff. This is 12, we're gonna hit again, and we bust out at 22. That is 17 for the casino. But yeah, I sort of started this as just sort of a way to, I guess, keep in touch with my roots, as it were. And I haven't done the most extravagant things with it to this point, but hopefully in the future, if all goes well, we can start doing some crazier stuff. I do need to get, I think, a proper microphone. If I can find a microphone that works with the iPhone and doesn't completely just junk up the quality, because that's sort of the problem I've been having is, I'll get a microphone, plug it in, and it just doesn't sound as good, right? And like the built-in microphone is fine. It's not perfect, but it works. So we have 6 here. I think you're technically supposed to split on a 6, but I'm not going to do that. So 6 plus 7, I believe, is 13. 9 plus 4 is 13, so yes, my belief was correct. Because it's 13, we're going to hit. And that is 14 plus 2, that is 20 right there. So we're going to stand and reveal that the casino, this has to be 11. Or no, this has to be 12, sorry. So 11 here, and plus 1 is 12. Of course, this could both be 2s, or both be 1s, so it could be 2, but we'll see here, the casino draws a 5. That puts them at 17. And because of our previously stated rule, they have to stand on 17, but it's a soft 17. So this is where things get interesting. So if that's 7, right, and not 17, then they can hit again. So they're going to. And they get another 5, so 10 plus 1 plus 1. Why can I not do math all of a sudden? 10 plus 1 plus 1 is 12. I think in some casinos there is a rule that you can only use, like if you get 2 aces, you have to use 1 as 11 and 1 as 1. I think that's a rule in some casinos. We're not going to play that way. We're kind of playing this a little bit scuffed, but that's part of the charm, you know? So we're going to say this is 12, and the casino is going to roll again and bust out at 22. So a taste of the medicine that we've been having. Of course, we have busted on 22 multiple times in this video. So we're going to do one more on this shuffle, and then we'll go back and shuffle again and play a third and final round. I think that sounds like a good plan to me. So let's begin. We have 5 here, casino 9, we get a 6, that's 11. Casino has a card face down. We're going to pull on 11, and we get 21. So the casino has 19. We are indeed victorious. Splendid, splendid, splendid. What I will say as well, going back to filmmaking, is I think there's a lot more avenues these days than there was when I was getting started to actually, you know, have your stuff get seen. You know, back when I was doing it in, you know, 2017, 2018, 2019, there wasn't really this, you know, highly developed indie culture of filmmaking. Like there were, you know, there were parts, there were patches, but it wasn't like this sort of resurgence I've seen lately with guys like Markiplier or Curry Barker or Kane Parsons, where they're actually getting picked up by major studios. Of course, Markiplier did it himself. He created his own studio, I believe, his own production company, and handled all the distribution and sales and stuff himself, if I'm remembering that correctly. I think I am, but, you know. But that really wasn't there when I was doing it, at least in my area, my part of the country. Like, LA, there's always going to be an indie scene. You know, you go to Cannes, there's always an indie scene. South by Southwest, I feel like was way bigger, like a decade ago when I was making my stuff. I feel like South by Southwest was like everybody's dream festival, and now, you know, the context that I still have, the people that are still even remotely interested in this stuff, they're all, you know, they're all raving about Cannes nowadays. They all want to go to Paris. They all want to go to France. But, you know, I haven't kept up with the scene as much. I don't know what that looks like. We're at 10. We're going to pull. We get 5. We're at 15. We're going to pull one more time. That is a 6. That is 21 right there. Casino has 14. Casino pulls. They get 8. They bust on 22. Yeah, there really wasn't the same kind of fervor that I've seen for new directors, new projects, new ideas. And I think a lot of that, honestly, is just a consequence of, you know, the way the movie scene is sort of turned into this, everything needs to be a franchise, everything needs to make $1 billion, everything, like, you know, I want to say it started with Sinners, but I think it was definitely before that. But Sinners is definitely the most recent example of where it's like, oh my god, people actually want to go and see original films. And of course that was reinstated when Obsession came out and just blew the doors off the box office on it, you know, tiny, tiny budget. Of course, it was still $750,000, which is more money than I'm ever going to have in my life. But, um, I think that just proves that this sort of financialized version of Hollywood that we've seen over the last decade or so, I think is dead. I don't want to jump the shark, right? I don't want to get ahead of myself in saying that, but I truly do believe that this version of Hollywood we've seen where, everyone's trying to make cinematic universes and franchise films and all that stuff, I really think that is not the world we're going to be seeing in the future. So we're on 12, and we bus. Well, we could say that's a 1. We're at 13. Let's pull again. And now we're at 20. So we stand on 20. Casino has 10. Casino at 10. They pull a 9. They get 19. We are victorious. But yeah, I know there's the whole AI thing as well. And on this channel, we are staunchly against AI. In 90% of all cases, I would argue that AI is an utterly worthless and valueless technology that doesn't do anything for anyone. It's garbage. If there were a word more perfect, I would have used it, but, we hit it out of the park when we started calling this slop, all right? This whole AI thing, if these AI bros, and I don't want to get too heated here, this is supposed to be a relaxing environment, but if I can say one thing, if these AI bros truly believed that they were any threat whatsoever to Hollywood, they would have done something by now, okay? It's been 5 years. Where's your Oscar, right? But I digress. What I mean to say in all of this, the takeaway is that I really do believe that with the way things are going, with the way the world is changing, I do think we're going to see a very fundamental restructure of the Hollywood system, of how filmmaking works, of art in general, because when you get into these circumstances where people don't have a lot, and right now people really don't have as much as they used to, that's when you really start to see the creative people come out of the woodwork and, really define sort of the next decade or so of what arts and culture look like. And I really do expect that to happen. And I don't think AI is a threat at all to the creative process, even a little bit. So I'm very excited to see where that goes and what evolves from that. And I'm very excited for guys like Curry Barker and Kane Parsons and Markiplier and whoever the next version of that is to come out and make new stuff. Hopefully we branch off from horror because, I'm glad horror is finally, being given the freedom that it's needed for the last decade, because, before, It Follows, I want to say, was around where it really started to come back, and then Jordan Peterson came out and released, hit after hit after hit, and Hereditary, and Ari Aster, and Robert Eggers, and all these guys started coming out and releasing these horror films that are, actually just good films. This sort of renaissance of horror that we've seen, I'm glad that happened because we've needed that for years. But I'm hoping we can start stepping into other genres now, especially if the superhero stuff really does start declining. I don't expect it to because Doomsday and Spider-Man and whatever else, but we'll see. We just busted on 25. We were at 15. We pull a 10. The casino was at 14, but we busted. So. Honestly, I could talk about movies for, as long as you're willing to give me the airtime. But I think I'll save that discussion for the time being. And let's pull one more hand, and then we'll call it. So, let's see here. We get a king, 10 for us. The casino also has a king. These are the same kings I believe we saw earlier, the yellow and the yellow and green. We are at 20. King and Jack. The casino, we're going to assume this is 20. It's not 16. And because of the rule that we operate under, they are sitting there at that 16. So that is a victory for us. And what better way to end this video than on victory? I hope you, dear viewer, enjoyed this video. I hope you found it relaxing. If you have any comments or questions, well, you know where they go. I thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you all again soon, and goodbye for now.